Hello, wonderful people. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome back to Growing Up Congolese. I miss you guys. I miss recording. I miss working on this. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for the one who are listening. To the new listeners, welcome. To the old listeners, I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. I promise I'll be more consistent. But thank you so much for keeping up. Even though I have not been posting anything, you guys have you kept on listening to old episode, and I've been getting new listeners. I just got a message from this girl on Instagram who told me how she was enjoying my podcast, and I was like, how did you even find me? Because I don't really publicize this podcast as I should. But it was very interesting because my Instagram page that she reached out to was my blog page, and I don't think I've ever posted about my podcast on my blog, only because I wanted to keep those two endeavors separate, right? I tell you guys to go to my blog on this on the podcast, but on my blog page I don't really mix my podcast with my blog. So it was very interesting how she found me, which I thought was weird, but I still appreciate that. So I honestly appreciate you guys. I'm very, 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 very thankful and very grateful. For the new listeners, I do have a blog. It's called See the World. It's a travel blog. Please check it out. Please follow this podcast. Now that I'm going to be consistent with y'all, I promise to at least have an episode once a week on Sundays, at least, right? I promise. So yeah, today's a special day for me. It's very special, and I wanted to talk about this topic because it's very relatable to me. So if you have listened to my old episodes, you will know that I grew up in a refugee camp, right? And today, 16 years ago today, my family and I left Benin, West Africa, for the United States. And every year, the days leading up to this day, specifically the 19th of May, is very emotional for me because I recount where was I, what was I doing, what was I thinking? Did I think that what happened, what my experiences in America, like when I was a kid and I heard that we're going to America, did I think what I am experiencing will be what I will experience? So I always have a very reflective mindset the days leading up to this day, because for a lot of kids, especially child refugees, the refugee camp, if you are quote unquote lucky to be in a refugee camp, the refugee camp becomes your country, right? It becomes a thing that you know. It becomes, to me, the refugee camp is my first memory of home, right? And it's so weird to think about refugee camp as a home, but when you are born into something, you don't know that it's a refugee camp. You don't know that the things that are happening are not supposed to happen, right? Because that's part of your normalcy. You do understand some aspects of it are bad, but that's the life that you are growing up into. So every time when I tell people I grew up in a refugee camp, there's always this look of pity, and I don't understand why, right? Of course, consciously, I understand why, right? Because refugee camp are looked up dysfunctional, it's full of unwanted, quote unquote, unwanted people. There's a lot of misfortune, unfortunate things that happen, and it is a place that people don't want to live in, right? It is a place that people do not want to be in. Nobody wants to be in a refugee camp. But when you're a child, it's a very interesting way of how you negotiate between your realities, right? Because the refugee camp is an unwanted place that people are desperately trying to get out of. But as a child, it is your first home. It is where you learn how to play with your friends. It is where you went to school. It is where you made friends. It is where you have your childhood memories, good or bad. So when I think about my childhood, I have a very nostalgic reflection of it, because it's like, wow, because of the refugee camp, I learned that family is not just the people that you were born with. Your neighbors can be your friends. Your neighbors can be your family. I was raised by women of different ethnicities, women of different countries. Although I did not have my biological father in my life, and you guys have heard me talk about my biological father in previous episodes, I was raised by men who lived in a refugee camp. Because of our African cultures, everyone was dad, everyone was uncle. So I have gained a big family because of a refugee camp. And it's because of it that I am a globalist, right? It's because of it I don't subscribe to one way of thinking or one nationality or one identity. Because from the young age, I learned to be everything and nothing at the same time. I learned from different perspectives. I learned different languages. I belong to different cultures. I belong to different families. So I get offended when people give me the pity look, because although it is an unwanted place, it's home for a lot of children. When you're growing up as a kid, you don't know any other home. I did not flee. I don't have remembrance of fleeing war. I don't have memory of fleeing conflict. My parents can detail you. My mother would tell me stories of how she fled the Congo or Central African Republic. That's her lived experience. I don't have memory of fleeing, but I do have my first memory. We were in a United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees truck. My mother just had my brother the day before, and we were entering the refugee camp. We were given a house on the Central African side, because our refugee camp was divided by 3 sides. So there was the Congolese, the Central African, because you had Congo, you had people from Chad, you had people from Rwanda and Burundi, and then on the other side there were the Nigerians, and on the other side there were mostly people from Togo. So, and I remember our first night there, people coming to welcoming us and everything. I remember when I first started speaking and people started looking at me weirdly because I had a stutter. I remember that. That's my first memory of my childhood. Prior to that, I don't have memories of fleeing a war. I don't think I ever heard a bomb or a gun go out, right? And during my thesis, I talked specifically about this topic, where I talked about how we need to reimagine the refugee camp, right? Especially for former child refugees, because the refugee camp acts as a de facto country. right? Because when you're a kid who grows up in a refugee camp, your idea of belonging to a nation is non-existent. A kid like me, I could tell you that, oh yeah, I'm Congolese because my parents told me to say I'm Congolese, or because they are Congolese. But the fact that I grew up in a refugee camp where I was meeting different people, I was acquiring different languages, where I was, like you could not define my nationality. In a way, you're stateless. Your nationality, it becomes an objective identity because it's one that you adopt from your parents. There's no legal basis for it. When my brother was born, because my brother was born in Benin, like his birth certificate said, born in Benin. I can't think of the time where we were like, oh, we're Congolese or we're from Benin. We were always like in between. We were always like, we were called Congolese because that's what we were taught to say. But there was no subjective feelings that we belong to Congolese culture. And so the refugee camp here act as a country because that's the home that you know. That's the identity that you know. And like I said earlier, it's kind of weird how you like, although it is your home, you are taught that it shouldn't be your home. You are taught to not love it as your home, right? Because every year, constantly, every refugee family, their hope, their prayers, their dreams was to get out of the refugee camp. Because it wasn't a place to raise a kid, it wasn't a place to raise a child, right? So we came to the United States to the resettlement program. A lot of people don't really understand what the resettlement program does, right? Because to understand immigration and refugee and how to become a refugee is a very complex story. But some people don't live in the refugee camp. Some people live like in the city. You don't have to live in a refugee camp, right? A refugee camp is a temporary holding place to hold people until things in your country get solved, right? And when things in the country get solved, by the way, they rarely do, there are three options. There's repatriation, where you can go back to the country, your native country. There is reintegration, so you integrate into the country of where the refugee camp is, right? So you integrate into, so we were in Benin, so you integrate into Benin society and everything, and you adopt that as your country. Or resettlement, where you go to a third country, most likely the United States, Canada, some Scandinavian countries, Australia. And when I was younger, everyone wanted to come to America, right? Everyone was either, so the big names were America, Canada, and Australia. And it's processed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and so they give you an interview. You do an interview, And basically is a luck thing, right? The United States can say that they want, let's say, 10 families, but 5,000 people, 500 families apply, but they're only looking for 10. So over the years, you have people pray to God. Pray to God. They sleep on the floor. They sleep in churches. They fast. They pray. They make sure their documents are in order, right? Because during the interview process, you want to convey to the interviewer that the other options are not good options, right? Why can't you stay in Benin? Or why can't you go back to your home country? And you have to victimize yourself constantly. You have to revisit. For those people who faced tragedy, who faced like traumatic experience where women were raped and everything, they have to recount that story over and over and over again. They have to make themselves sound believable. They have to cry. They have to do everything to appeal to the interviewer's emotion to make sure that their application goes to the next step. And some people will make up stories. Some people lies. But because they kind of knew the formula of what the interviewers were looking for, they would say anything. There's story of parents doing like very crappy things to their kids to make them look disabled so that the interviewers or the countries can have sympathy on them, just so they can go to their countries. People will come, they will gather around, make plans, review their applications. If it did not, the sappier the better, right? But it wasn't just the sappier the better, but it was sappier and luck. Because your story had to make sense. And there were people who would just make up the dumbest stories ever, and they would not get it. Because they were trying to come to either the United States, Canada, or Australia. And for those of us who were able to make it to the end, where the United States have agreed to take us and everything, you have a survivor's remorse that you carry for the rest of your life. Every year, my mother sends money home. Like, when I say home, to other refugee people who stayed back. Because you were like, oh my God, we were lucky to come here. And we understand the lives that they're living back home. So let's help them. And you cannot say no. Because you feel like, I may have not deserved it. Maybe someone else had a more tragic story than I did. So you feel compelled to give money, send gifts. When uncles and aunties who raised me, they will send me Facebook messages and be like, hey, we can't pay rent and everything, blah, 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 blah. It's like, you are indebted to them. You feel indebted to them for the rest of your life. Because you understand what it was like to go days without eating. Because you understand what it's like to go weeks without knowing where the money will come from, right? So you feel indebted to them. And a lot of people don't understand that resettled refugee, once they get the resettled status, they don't come to the United States or they don't come to Canada or Australia as refugees. No. We were refugees in Benin, which is very different than asylum seeker, right? So let's say you run away from a war. The first country that you land, you seek asylum. You tell them, hey, I'm running away from this country because of war, famine, poverty, blah, 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 and I'm looking for refuge. That country will grant you permission to stay. When they grant you permission to stay, you are a refugee in that country. So we are not refugees when we come to the United States. We came to the United States because we were refugees. There was a country in this story, Benin, that consider us refugees. They put us in a camp where we were refugees for 7 years. And now when we come here as legal immigrants. So my immigration story is very different than the immigration story of people coming into the southern border. People who are coming into the southern border are trying to be refugees in the United States. They are seeking asylum to the United States. So that is why I always tell people, it's like, the immigration topic is so diverse and so complex that you cannot lump all of us together. There are people in Iraq who will apply for the American visa, wait for years to get the American visa because the American visa is the hardest thing to get. They will come to the United States legally, and as soon as they land at the airport, they will go to U.S. Borders and Security and seek asylum. So there's a lot of avenues that people come into the United States. But resettled refugees who lived in refugee camp, who went through the resettlement process, they come to the United States to be residents. They come to the United States as residents. After 5 years, they can apply for the United States citizenship. It's like the DV lottery. The only difference with a DV lottery is that people who win the lottery, they have to finance their own travels, their stay, and whatnot. Resettled refugee, because you're in a refugee camp, you're poor, you don't have money, the United States loans you the money to come to the United States. Once you start to work and everything, you have to pay that money back. You have to pay that money back. So you technically don't come for free. When my family came here, we were on food stamps for 6 months. And then after 6 months, because they give you 6 months to kind of settle in. Before we even came here, we had to take we had to go to orientation, where we had to learn about the laws of the United States, what to do, what not to do, what's life like in the United States and everything. And then when you come here, they give you 6 months. As soon as we came, my mother started taking ESL classes, and then the agencies that welcome people who come to the United States through the resettlement process, they help you find a job, and it's usually like a housekeeping job and everything, and then you start to work, and then you start to save money to pay the money back that the United States loaned you to come to the United States. And that's one avenue of migrating to the United States. So yeah, that's what happened 16 years ago for my family. And it's funny because people always ask me, like, what was a cultural shock? Seeing dog poop on the floor was my first cultural shock. And if you ever listen to Chimamanda, The Danger of the One Story, you will know that she talked about how we viewed like Americans, like, people that didn't even know that they poop and everything is clean, everything is good and everything. So coming to the United States with the mentality of like everywhere looks like Times Square, but not like the Times Square downstairs, not like on the streets. I'm talking about the buildings, at night when it's pretty, right? That's what you think of. So seeing dog poop on the floor was like, wait, there's dog poop on the floor? There's dirt in this country? There's poverty in this country? Oh my God, nobody told us. Nobody told us. Seeing rats, that was a culture shock. I remember my brother got in trouble at school because the teacher brought a hamster, and then he was scared of it. And as somebody was like, aren't you from Africa? Like, don't you see like rodents in Africa? So my brother pushed him off the stairs and everything, and he got suspended. That was the first time he got suspended at school. Because it was just like, I did not know you can see rats in houses or on the streets, So those were some of the cultural shock coming here. But yeah, it's been 16 years since we left, and it feels very long. It feels like it's been more years, but I don't know how 16 years should be feeling. It's weird because when we came, Obama was running to be president. So my first experience of American politics was seeing the first Black man become president. So that was very cool. That's my first recollection that was my first American election. And yeah, tomorrow will be 16 years since we landed in America. So we left on the 19th, we landed on the 20th. And also tomorrow is also, 19. So it was also 5 years ago when I was in France, reminiscing on this day, my Airbnb got burglarized in Marseille. And you're like, oh, I never knew that one day I would go from refugee camp to being in Marseille to get burglarized. And now I'm living in DC and I'm hoping to have a job with the federal government. Life have its surprises, right? All right, guys. Thank you for listening to my reflection. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Please, I'm back. So show up every Sunday. I got you. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.